Okay, so we have one more speaker before we break for coffee, and it is my huge pleasure to introduce you to Maaike Groenewegen, and she is from ConvoCat and is going to be talking about some of the practical aspects of managing workflow and incorporating your documents and kind of bringing all that together into the conversational design. So super excited. I know this is going to be really helpful for everybody. Thank you.
Hi everybody. The camera for online, is that over there? Can you see me already? I can't see you, but a big shout out to all my online friends out there. It's just so lovely to have you with us today. And congratulations to everyone here in the room. You have hit the 2-hour point of focus and concentration. So a little applause for yourself, and also because 2 hours is long, right? So I can imagine you might need a little bit of activation because I'm actually the only thing standing between you and a really nice cup of coffee. So if you want to activate yourself a little bit, we can do what we call in Dutch wapperen. So you basically wapperen, you shake your hands like this, and it will kind of make your blood flow a little bit more and activate you. And also it makes for a great group picture because you all look really, really funny. It's just so nice. Everybody always says, yeah, let's go wapperen. It's a Dutch tradition, right? Welcome to Europa, papa. Oh, I can see you now. That's cool. So yeah, I've got 20 minutes. I'm not known for being concise. I'm a conversation designer, so well, yeah. I'll try my best, but I'll probably run out of time. So I'm here today to give you a little bit of practical insight in my work and how I actually make the most out of my documents in Retrieval Augmented Generation in a very simple 4-step approach. So before we do that, of course, the obligatory introduction. Hoi, my name is Maaike Groenewegen. I'm a conversation designer and a prompt designer with my own company, ConvoCat. When I tell people that I'm a prompt designer, this is typically what they think I do. Especially the kind of blue AI hue is a telltale giveaway. And they think it's really sexy, it's the job of the future. Well, I can tell you what I do is basically I just tell large language models what to do. I prompt them. I've been doing that for 25 years with humans as a technical writer. It's not that much different, actually. It's a lot of experimenting. Sometimes I feel like prompting is like throwing a plate of spaghetti against the wall and just see what sticks, and that's the one I'll use. It's a lot of automating repetitive work, so I'm definitely not like generating images all day of Dutch women in gigantic clogs and stuff like that. And it's definitely not sexy, because what I use every day probably sounds familiar: spreadsheets, flowcharts, and a lot of language nerdery. So when we talk about RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, this is probably the most popular use case for GenAI so far, right? It's like the marketeers tell us, it's talk to your document, you just upload a document to a generative AI, and you can talk to it in minutes. So yeah, I uploaded the EU AI Act to ChatGPT, and this is what I got. I'm like, hi, hello, how can I assist you today? Well, you tell me. I just uploaded 272 pages of regulatory framework. So there's bound to be something in there that's useful for me, right? And this is what I feel is the challenge, and sometimes even the problem, with Q&A as our main static interaction model for chatbots. It's still the user that needs to know what to ask, how to ask for it, and eventually also what to do with the answer that they get. Like, how do you apply it in your own context? And I don't think that's really fair, because we're still putting all the cognitive load with our users. Also, I think it's not really fair to the people who are writing these documents, because good content, contrary to popular belief, doesn't just appear out of thin air. I mean, that's ChatGPT. But good content typically is designed by humans. For instance, as a tech writer, I design my content with a task-based, user-centered, human-centered approach. I take into account what the goal of my audience is. What problem are they trying to solve? What are they trying to do here? What is my audience for a manual or whatever? And also, I write from a particular perspective. Problem solving, troubleshooting. Right now I do a lot of prompting also for educational purposes. I work on virtual tutors or study buddies. I work for publishers. So it's really important to realize that I'm not just writing things and putting them out there. I do it with a purpose in mind and with a lot of user research. And I strongly believe that these documents that have been designed, they do have a hidden interaction model somewhere. When I write a troubleshooting guide, I'm basically replacing your really tech-savvy family member or colleague who's not available, right? Or they're like, yeah, look it up, it's probably in the manual. When I design a study buddy, I wouldn't say it's a replacement for a teacher, but the interaction model might be quite similar. And this is what I call content-driven interaction. And it basically allows us, and I mean conversation designers, content designers, prompt designers, to move from our regular Q&A pattern to things that are more dynamic, more interactive, and perhaps even more useful. Things like elaborate and explain. If you've got something that's new to you, I mean, you can think of generative AI what you want, but the one thing it's really good at is taking expert knowledge and explaining it to a novice. This is something that not a lot of people talk about, but I think it's one of the extraordinary capabilities of Gen AI. Summarize and simplify. You have this huge AI hype, lots of research articles that you need to keep up with. Hey, give me a daily abstract. What's important for me as a prompt engineer or for me as a business developer? Compare and check documents, regulations, guide and troubleshoot. Of course, this is the classic use case for customer support, user support. Suggest and brainstorm if you want to research and be kind of, inspired or want to inspire yourself, because that's basically what you do. So in 4 steps, you can go from this, I don't know, you tell me, to hello there, I'm here to help you assess the potential risk associated with AI applications based on the EU AI Act. It's for informational purposes only. This is a disclaimer that I always prompt for, and a lot of other disclaimers. But what you see here is a welcome message that asks the user for input. Can you tell me more about the application you're developing or planning to develop? And this prompt is actually the start of an interactive walkthrough of some of the content that's there in the EU AI Act, namely Annex 3, Article 5. Annex 3 is how to assess for high risk. Article 5 is about prohibited applications of AI. How do I know that? I read the content. And that's what I would love to start with. Content-driven interaction in 4 steps starts with a really important step that not a lot of people take explicitly. It's to analyze the content that you've got available in your RAG system. This will be the largest part of my talk today, because the other 3 steps, user task analysis, design a suitable task and role for your AI, and design the actual interaction, that's things that we are more used to doing, also as conversation designers. But this content analysis, that's what it's all about for me. And this will help you to get an increased understanding of your content and therefore help you design better user experiences for that content. Step 1, analyze your content. Well, the most obvious question, and I mean it's such an open door that I hardly dare to mention it, is when I do content analysis, my first question is, what's in there? What is the document about? And I mean, if you upload like 10,000 documents from your knowledge base to a RAG system, obviously this is not something you do for every document. And it shows, because there's a lot of hallucinations, a lot of like mismatches in answers. So I strongly believe that you should have a sense of what's in your content collection. Also, what's in there that's useful for your end users. For instance, the EU AI Act has a long tracing history, like track changes. This is interesting if you're interested in the administration of the document, but it doesn't help you solving your problems or executing your tasks. So that's typically information you even might want to disregard or cut out of your information if you put it in a RAG system? How is it structured? Is there any information that's irrelevant? Well, this administrative, like front-end, back-end matter. Is the document topic-based, or is it one huge monolith? Like topic-based content typically contains like self-contained units of information that are actually quite easy to chunk for a RAG system. What kind of task-based information is in the document, if any? What kind of concepts are there? Because tasks and concepts, they go together. If I want to accomplish a task, I need to know how, and I need to know what. Here's a little example from a washing machine manual, and without even being able to read the text, you can already see there's a lot of visual hierarchy going on here. Headings, white space, the instructions are clearly marked with little bullets, and if you look at more detail to this document, you can clearly see, hey, it's an instruction guide, and each page is actually a task, and each task starts on a new page, which makes for easy navigation, not only for us humans, but also for RAG systems. The information types are clearly labeled and are always in the same order in this manual. They always start with cautions and warnings, then there's a little instruction with steps, and it ends with a conceptual explanation of definitions. For instance, here it's really nice to know the different types of gradations of soiledness of your laundry, so you can sort them. And this is really kind of easy. Well, if we look at the EU AI Act, just visual inspection, what strikes you? Text, right? Long pages of text. And that's with a purpose. That's also been done by design. And I can tell because I also used to work with a lot of legislatory frameworks. These documents need to be as precise, as specific, and as complete as possible. And for that, you need words. Design choices here might actually influence the interpretation of what's there, so it needs to be as neutral as possible. Does this make for great readability? No, but that's probably not even the purpose of the document at this time, except for the actual target audience. What did strike me, though, is that there's no table of contents in this document. And it's almost 300 pages. I spent hours just finding the information I needed. And this is typically what we call a document as a monolith. No judgment, but there's some kind of specifics here that make it harder to process, not just for humans, but also for machines. Even though that might seem like the first impression, if we go into the content, we do see clear structures. It's not visual, but it's textual. Similar concepts are phrased in exact the same way. So you've got like these yellow marks here, the notion of deployer, should be interpreted as. The notion of biometric data should be interpreted as. It's almost music, right? It's almost rhythm. This kind of structure, systems like it a lot. So this makes for very, very easy kind of chunking and extraction. Also, there's lots of different information types in there, perhaps not explicitly labeled, but if you pay close attention to the text, you can find them. Things like definitions, requirements, provisions, rules. And here are some examples of, technical documentation. Apparently, we need to create technical documentation for some of these systems. We need to know what a high-risk system is. We need to know what systems are even allowed in this new regulatory framework. Okay, so what's next? Now that you've done your document analysis, and this is just a little bit of a start, this will prepare you for designing your prompts, because that's what I do, right? That are based on actual information. And the good thing is that if you write prompts for information that's there, the chances of hallucinations will decrease. Because if you know that the answers are there, or the definitions are there, your prompt will find them too. It will also give you situation awareness. If you know what's in the document, it's easier for you to check whether the answers that are generated or the interaction that's generated is correct and true. So you yourself can be the human in the loop because you recognize when something is missing or something might be misinterpreted. And you can put this in your prompt. This is actually the part of the input structure of my prompt. So I just tell it like, hey, your interaction with the user is based on your knowledge, specifically Article 5 and Annex 3 of the EU AI Act. The Act itself is a legal framework with these information types, and you can even include a little description of each part of the document. And this ensures that the generative AI model will be primed for using this information in this way. So you're giving it not only input, but also a little bit of context. This is the biggest step in my 4-step approach. So all the others were almost there for coffee. Bear with me. Are you still good? Do you need a little bit more wapperen? No? Okay. Analyze your users and their tasks. And again, sounds like an open door, especially probably for the content designers and conversation designers in the room here. But who is it for, and what do they want to do with your information? In the case of the washing machine, this is quite obvious, right? This is first-time users. They just bought a new washing machine, and this is typically what you don't read, and you just plunk in your laundry, and then you find out, oh, I'm not quite sure how it works. Let's start at the troubleshooting guide, because it's not working as expected. So the user base here is clear. The top tasks actually are the sections in the manual, so someone already designed for the top tasks of the user, which is really nice. And that's typically what you find in instruction manuals. Someone probably took the time already to do this user analysis and this task analysis, and to kind of cater for that in the information. The EU AI Act is quite a different beast, because in the section where it says what's the audience of this document, well, it's basically the whole world, or at least the whole, whole Europe, like EU institution, member states, developers, deployers, and the general public. But you have to be interested, which makes sense if you want to read 272 pages. That's quite a large audience to cater for, and especially it's quite a large audience to cater for their specific needs, because we don't know them yet. Typically at this stage of framework development, this is all left for later steps in procedure. Still, there are people who need to read this stuff and to know about. Same for a goal or tasks. It's about establishing harmonized rules, protect fundamental rights, and foster innovation. Well, that's kind of hard to break down in specific tasks, right? Still, there's the question like, what am I supposed to do with this information? And of course, it depends really a lot on who am I? How do I make sense of this? Where do I even start? And you can clearly see that there's no particular audience-based user-centered design in this yet. And of course, this is also not the purpose of this document, but it's something that we as designers can do as a next step. And even though it might not be there explicitly, again, if you look at parts of the document, you can already see user questions shining through, right? Okay, if we have a list of prohibited artificial intelligence practices, as an AI solution provider, how do I know if my application is even legal in the EU? That's a very important question. And this document actually provides guidelines to help you determine that. How do I know whether my application is high risk? Technical documentation. As a technical writer, I need templating and guidance on how to create the required documents for these solution providers. Can you help me out? So you can literally see kind of the use cases kind of popping up from the screen, and that's something I love. That's why I love reading documents, and I'd honestly say, go and have a try. It's fun. So after a user task analysis, you actually have a little part of your prompt again, namely the context. Why are we building this AI? Well, we're building this AI for AI system suppliers that need to check whether their systems are legally allowed and whether they are high risk. So all of a sudden, we have an audience, we have a purpose, we have a task, we have a goal. Depending on the risk categorization, they may need to take extra measures. And this is important for an AI to kind of be primed for, because it kind of gives a sense of urgency, of gravitas. Kind of, this is important stuff. We're not kind of, doing prompting with Dolly or something. Step 3, almost there. Bear with me. And this is the one you probably know from your prompting courses, your online, this is the one prompt to rule them all. Make sure that your AI has a role and a task. And usually that's something like, oh, you're an expert conversation designer, but you're really grumpy and you don't actually want to answer any questions. But what you can also do is moving from this generic one that we had when we started out, you're a helpful assistant, you're actually not so helpful because you're not giving me any kind of design affordances here. We can actually move to roles that are about the task that they're going to help you with, like being an interactive reading guide. And depending on your background, your role, your profession, this prompt will guide you through the EU AI Act, bearing in mind what's important for you. So if I'm a technical writer, it will probably tell me a lot about the documentation. If I'm a solution provider, it will probably go to Annex 3 in Article 5. And this will give you a whole different welcome message. Mind you, this welcome message there's nothing tweaked in there. It's literally the outcome of my instruction to the AI model. So just by being very specific with your words, you can really influence not just the wording of your AI, but also the behavior. And the last one, which is one specific target audience, solution providers, one specific task, interactive checklist that walks the user through the act. Your task is to assess risk categories of an AI software supplier's application. When I prompt that, you get quite a large welcome message, but the final part is the most important because it says, hey, could you please provide me with a description of the AI application, including the intended use and relevant features? And it will use this input to kind of guide you through the actual checklist. And that's what you can put in your role and task. You're an interactive, and then there's a little bit of overlap here, checklist that walks the user through the AI Act, and you've got a specific task. So you can see that by kind of going through these steps, like methodically, you can actually build up your prompt in a way that's informed by the content that you've got available in your RAG. And the final one, probably the most difficult one, is to design the actual interaction. Okay, you've got your welcome message, you have started, but what then? And this is actually not that much different from conventional conversation design. You basically map out a workflow, but rather than also writing the content, you write the instructions for the AI. So we've got a welcome message and a disclaimer, greet the user, explain what you are, include the disclaimer, collect user information. Okay, what kind of application are you developing? Rephrase and expand, that's a really interesting one because people tend to be quite economical in their answers. By prompting the AI to rephrase and expand, it will actually give its own interpretation of the user answer, and it will check with the user, hey, if I understand you correctly, this is what you're talking about. Are we in agreement? Are we on common ground here? Because, of course, it's really important that if you do such a check, that you are kind of working from the same principles and the same starting point. Then we do the actual step-by-step assessment. I love chain of thought reasoning as a prompting technique because it will kind of trigger your AI to actually explain how it came to all the conclusions and things it's spitting out. This is really interesting because I already see a little error in my prompt here. I forgot to include Article 5. How do I know I forgot to include Article 5? Because I know Article 5 is in the document. If I had just uploaded the document without looking at it and just started prompting, I would have never known. And finally, present the results. For each check, briefly explain why and how you came to that conclusion, and take the time to think. Some people actually believe that allots more processing time to the model. We don't know how it works, but it tends to give slightly better results. Although GPT-4, I don't know what it has been doing, but on Friday afternoons, it just won't do anything for me anymore. That's nice, right? If you've got a system like that, like in an operational environment, yeah, it's Friday afternoon, sorry, I'm off for a drink, you go and do your own work. So this is then our final prompt. It's long. I'm happy to send it to you, so don't worry if you don't get it here. Also, I'm more than happy to do like a little kind of follow-up session for people who are interested. And the end result, I didn't want to rely on a live demo because yesterday GPT-4 was like, oh, you seem to be in Scotland. I don't do things in Scotland. It just didn't do anything anymore. I was like panicking. So here are some screenshots that I took in the Netherlands. So welcome message, and it's asking like, okay, what are you developing? I'm like, I'm developing a voice app that coaches young children how to manage their first bank account. Nice and risky use case. I'm like, I need to have a good demo here, right? Thank you for sharing that. And here you can see an example of the rephrase and expand technique. If I understand correctly, you're developing a voice-activated application, blah, 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 blah. This app likely involves processing personal data and might incorporate AI voice recognition and financial advice functionalities tailored to children's needs. Now, this is something it does because of my prompt, but the actual response is purely generated based on the contents of the EU AI Act. Having understood the nature of your application correctly, I'm like, yeah, sure. And then it just gives you a little summary. I mean, it can do much more, but hey, I've got 1 second left. This is it. It will actually give you a little analysis, and right at the bottom, you can see this would suggest a high-risk categorization. Additionally, since it targets children, there's an enhanced obligation to ensure the system does not exploit their vulnerabilities. And that is Article 5. So the first part is Annex 3, last part is Article 5. And I was actually quite impressed that it managed to kind of think of that. So well done, chat. If you want to try this 4-step approach yourself, I made a very kind of rudimentary GPT on ChatGPT. If you scan the QR code, you'll get a link to that GPT. Again, it's just a very small prototype, so I'm very open to exploring further for people who are interested. And if you'd like to know a little bit more, I'm actually opening up my agenda from April onwards. I'm not taking on any big assignments anymore because I would love to share this kind of information with people, get feedback. So if you're up for a workshop with you and your team or a fireside chat, just get in touch. And we'll talk soon. Groetjes.
Thank you very much, Maaike. That was superb. Superb. Really. Really nice talk. And, it's coming back to what you said at the beginning, Maaike, I really like when one can see practically why it is wrong. And again, I've seen that on other conferences. If someone stands there and says, we have a new feature, it allows you to create a digital assistant in just a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Nope.
No. Really not. And you could see here, and I really loved how you walked us through this, you could see here why not, and why it is important. I said this at the very start today, that we also understand our regulators, We understand why a legal document looks the way it looks, right? So actually, also for the questions, Caroline, I'm not sure if something has come up in the meantime, but the main things were actually great talk, wonderful.
I know, I've got him right here. Oh, by the way, can I say hi to Ruud? He just joined, he's in Delft.
I think we had one question, which was like, is the format of the format in which the document is submitted, what kind of influence does that have?
Absolutely, and unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to include it in my slides, so I'm very happy this question comes up. PDFs processed as images? No. PDFs with tables? Depends on the model. What I love about the EU AI Act, that PDF is actually superb because it's got metadata. It's processed along the latest PDF standards, so it makes very easy text extraction. It's searchable. Also, Word documents with lots of tables and no formal paragraph styles, no. And the thing is, it will extract something, but you cannot be sure it extracts the right thing. And that's probably the biggest risk in generative AI. It's not that nothing happens, because if nothing happens, you know something is wrong. But the thing is, something happens and you don't know whether it's true or not, whether it's correct or not. So that means that I find myself still checking all of my work as a prompt engineer because I can't rely on the output to be accurate, factually correct yet in 100% of the cases.
One more time, please. Big applause for Maaike.
Yeah.
Very nice talk. Thank you very much.